Welcome to the Work, Wealth, and Travel podcast. I'm your host, Nicole, and this podcast is your guide to start creating a lifestyle by design. From entrepreneurship, money and finance, taxes and residencies, and everything in between, this show highlights the nuances of a true global citizen lifestyle. Let's dive in. Brenden, welcome to the Work, Wealth, and Travel podcast. I am so looking forward to our conversation today, but before diving in, please share with us, the listeners, a little bit about your story, your journey, where you started, and how you got to where you are today. And I know that's a loaded question.
No, you're all good, Nicole. First of all, thanks for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, my story in many ways, if I had to summarize it in one word, it's probably accident. I wasn't looking to do what I'm doing today, which is being an executive communication coach. When I was 12 years old, I actually wanted to be an accountant. That was my dream because I was really good at math and I was really bad at everything else. So there you go. So I started studying in accounting, Nicole, in business school. I'm like 19 years old at this point. And I realized that I needed to get a job at one of the big four accounting firms. It's like these big companies in accounting I never really heard of. I found out my first semester of college, like PricewaterhouseCoopers, Deloitte, Ernst & Young, KPMG. And a lot of the gods of the big four, as we call them in college, people who got internships at these companies. So I would go up to these gods and say, how do I get a job at these companies? And they said, do case competitions. And like most of the audience listening to this podcast, I kind of looked at these guys and I said, what is a case competition? Which is basically sports for nerds. So other guys my age were playing rugby or football. I was doing presentations competitively. Long story short, I got accidentally really passionate and talented at coaching other people how to speak. And then I just started making videos in my mom's basement, and here we are a few years later.
Okay, so that's really interesting, but there's a lot in between there where it's like, and I just started making videos in my mom's basement, and then here we are. So,
yeah. Well, I don't want to ramble too long either. So,
no, I'm very interested to hear, what that looked like from seeing that there was potentially a niche there, or there was content that was missing online. What did identifying that problem look like, and then where did a potential solution come in, and how did you fit that?
Yeah, fantastic point there, Nicole. So let's backtrack a little bit. So at this point, what happened in my career is I made a transition from only doing things for money versus doing things for time. So my parents were factory workers, Nicole, minimum wage workers. We don't have a lot of money. So the reason I became an accountant is I pursued what Gade Hendricks calls in his book Zone of Genius, the zone of excellence. So the zone of excellence is something that you're really good at. You can even get paid very well to do. You even get praise from everyone around you, but secretly, when nobody else is listening to or watching, you feel a little empty, right? So you're kind of like a Wall Street banker, but inside you just want to bake cupcakes and charge $10 a cupcake and make the best cupcakes in the city, right? So that was kind of me. But that's the immigrant life. Like in my side, I didn't really see being a passion as something I needed to have in my life. So when I got my job, I got a job after at IBM in their consulting division. That was actually a lot of fun, but it was really painful as well. And I started making, $75,000, $80,000 a year. So when I got to that income level, because I live in Montreal, you actually live pretty well on that income. I realized that, oh, wait a second, I need to do something for my time. So I'm not the kind of entrepreneur, Nicole, like most people, like some of them are, like that are advertised in media. Mark Cuban and Gary Vaynerchuk are people who are like a born-bred entrepreneur. So they grow up eating entrepreneur for breakfast. Maybe they're eating entrepreneurs on the side. I don't know. They're like selling lemonade and, selling people on mowing their lawn and stuff. That wasn't me. So what happened was in my last semester of college, I was just about to start my high-paying job at IBM, and I worked there for 3 years before I quit. What happened was one of my students that I coached in speaking for free, so I never charged $1 for this at that time, asked me a question that changed the trajectory of my life. And the question was, Brenden, how did you learn how to speak? I was like, what are you talking about, dude? Like, I don't know. Like, well, did you have a coach? Did you watch YouTube videos on speaking? And for me, communication coach is very intuitive. Even if you just met me for fun, Nicole, like in Mexico, which is where you're based out right now, I would just start coaching you because it's just fun. That's what I do with my friends. We just kind of challenge each other. And that planted a seed. So I went on YouTube and I started watching. And also at this point, I'd coached 60 people on communication. because I just love coaching. And I started watching these videos, and I was horrified by what I saw. I was like, a lot of the advice was very academic. So a lot of them have PhD, and a lot of them are my friends now. But at the time, I was a young kid. So I was like, none of this advice makes sense. Like when I'm coaching these students, that's not what I would say in these videos. And there were so many inefficiencies that I just started making videos for fun. But I never thought it was going to be a business.
Okay, so that's really interesting. And what year was this? What's that time frame?
So the idea for Master Truck initially sprouted in the last quarter of 2018, and I started making videos. My first video was January 2019, so it's been around 5 years now.
Okay, yeah, so that is quite a while. So you've been in this game for a while, online business, coaching, consulting. So I'm curious, what has diving into the entrepreneurial aspect, since that's kind of the track that we're on, what has it looked like to not only build, but also to grow, whether it be a team, a business? What has that looked like for you? And did this all start with a YouTube channel?
For sure, Nicole. And I'm happy to walk you through those 3 key moments. So the first moment was there is no business, right? I start making videos in my mom's basement for fun. And it's not because I'm Mother Teresa. Oh, I'm going to change the world. It's because I had a really high paying job. So it wasn't like, if I stayed at IBM for a decade, like we're talking minimum $250,000 salary, like by the time I'm 30, because of how hectic and hard the job is. So like it's not like a Mother Teresa. It's just I was able to provide, and I just thought it was a fun side project. So the first 9 months of Master Truck was exactly how it sounds. Just a hobby, like the couch. I need to change the couch, but that's the couch I started Master Talk on for the first 9 months. And then something happened, which is I went to Summit of Greatness. So Summit of Greatness is an event that podcaster Lewis Howes hosts. And I've been a fan of Lewis's work for a long time. So I always wanted to meet the guy. I'm just a Uber fan. So I go to his event every year for fun now. But the first time I went, I didn't really have that much money because most of the money I was making from IBM, I was using it to pay off our family debt. But I saved up like a few $100 for the ticket. I stayed in like a $20 a day Airbnb, and I go to this event, right? And this is September 2019. And 2 key things happen at this event. Number one is I signed my first paying client, a friend of mine named Ludimir that I meet at the event. And it wasn't even intentional. So I just started helping him. He was quitting his job at Amazon to start a real estate business. He's doing really well now. He's killing it. And I take very little credit to that, by the way. It has nothing to do with my coaching. So he just did really well. I just coached him. And he calls me at the end of the event. And he goes, "Hey, Brenden, I want you to be my coach." And I was like, "Cool, why?" He's like, "I just love the advice. This is really good. How much do you charge?" And I was like, "What do you mean? I'm just going to do it for free." And he convinced me that I should be paying him because he said, "You listen to 800 episodes of this guy's podcast. I don't have time to spend 800 hours doing this. I'll just pay you $100 an hour." And that's how I got my first client. And the second key thing that I'll pause to jump in so I don't monologue for too long here, Nicole, is I meet my business partner, Vamsi. He's 20 years older than me. He lives in the US. He's married with 2 kids. He has a completely different lifestyle than me. And he just saw something in me. And he already had a thriving coaching business. And that was my first joint venture. And we've been buddy ever since. And that's how I signed my first 10 clients after that.
Interesting. Okay, so I like that you mentioned that. What I'm pulling out that's interesting to me is the fact that you got your first, it sounds like 10 clients through essentially networking and through putting yourself out there online, but that's not where the clients initially came in. They came in through networking. And very interesting to me. And on that point, actually going back to networking, I think so many people, I don't know if you find this, I'm sure you talk about this a lot more than I do, are afraid of, I think, the word networking. It's not the actual networking, but it's the word networking where it's like, no, I can't do that. And then it gets procrastinated and put on the back burner. So I'm curious your take on that, because networking is so key as an entrepreneur. But what I also pull out from that is the fact that you met your business partner, and I'm curious how that changed the trajectory of your business. So I guess that's 2 questions in one. Feel free to answer whichever one first.
No, 2 excellent ones, Nicole. Always when I'm being interviewed, it always starts like I made it seem really simple, and then I get into the weeds of like what actually happened. So let's dive into this idea of networking, and let's dive into whether the relationship with Vams is accidental or not, because it wasn't, in my opinion. So the first piece is this idea of networking. So a lot of us have a misconstrued idea of what that is, Nicole, to your point. We see it as business cards, putting on a nice tie, trying to shake as many hands as possible, trying to get business. Whereas that's not the way I've always seen networking, or at least recently, the way I teach it to people. The way I see networking is, let's say, hypothetical, you meet somebody new every few days, which is very rare. You meet somebody new every 3 days. Maybe you will, because you have a podcast and you seem to be very outgoing, and I'm sure you'll meet a lot more people. Same here with me. But with most people listening to this podcast, you meet somebody every 3 days. Let's say, best case scenario, after a year, you'll have met around 100 people, right? And if we live 50 more years than our current age, let's just assume for simplicity, everyone listening to this podcast right now is 30 years old, and we live until 80. That's 5,000 people. So why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because the mistake we make in networking is we wish everybody liked us, when the reality is, in a sea of 8 billion people, we only get to shake hands with 5,000. So the question we need to ask ourselves is, who are those 5,000 people? Who do I want those 5,000 people to be? That's point one. Point two is that's exactly what I did. I call this intentional proximity. So, like, if the reason I went to Lewis's event, I wasn't smart enough to realize it at the time. Now I'm a lot better at articulating it, but it wasn't really the case back then, where I said, hey, I mean, I love this podcast. So if there's 1,000 people who are attending this event, they're going to Columbus, Ohio. This is in the middle of nowhere. I've never been to Ohio in my life. It's like, okay, you're really going out of your way. Even if I'm based in Montreal, I had to take 2 flights just to get there. So if you're going there, you're probably committed. But let me put it a step further. Where did I meet Vamsi at this event? How Lewis events work, Nicole, is in the morning there's a 5 a.m. workout. There's different workouts that you do. And I want to be clear to the audience, Brenden does not wake up at 5 a.m. You can tell by my hair. I do not wake up at 5 a.m. I wake up at 10 a.m. But I woke up at 4:30 that morning for one reason, because I just wanted to see who else was going to come. And there was only 50 people at that workout, and Vamsi was right next to me. So was it an accident? Maybe. But I think the idea is, when you put yourself in places that you want to be, then you'll win. And the last thing on this is important, is after the conference was over and I got on a call with them, I asked him how he found out about the event, Nicole, and it shocked me when he told me that Lewis told him about the event. He was at another event. Lewis was like next to me, he said, you should come to the event. And when he said that, I was like, I need to follow this guy wherever he goes. And I said, what's the next event you're going to? And he said, San Diego in February. And I booked my flights right away, and I went to San Diego. And that's how I built the partnership with them.
That's so cool. I love that you're such a go-getter of like, this is what I'm passionate about doing. This is going to grow, and I want to build this bigger. And I need some more hands on deck. And like the serendipity of, I really believe in everything happens for a reason, and the universe puts you where you need to be. And so that was clearly meant for a reason. Now, has having a business partner changed the trajectory of the business for the better? Do you think it would look a lot different if it were just you now?
So now fascinating. So here's the way I would answer this. So my advice on an average basis to most people is to actually not have a business partner, because the divorce rate on business partnerships is actually much higher than on romantic relationships. I just got very lucky in that way, where me and Vamsi have still been partnered. We actually have a third business partner who's Vamsi's old friend. And we were actually talking about this morning, because we always do like a, what do you call it? Like a summary of what's going well and what's going wrong. And it's always fascinating to me, and I always tell the guys this all the time, where we never argue. It's ridiculous. We debate, we'll say, okay, we need to do this, but we're so complementary to each other that it just meshes really well. That's why I equate me, Vamsi, and Venkat to Airbnb's founding team, right? Brian Jeske, Joe Gebbia, Nathan Blakarczyk. They have a fantastic team. They just get well, and it's very rare when you scale a company to billions of dollars and the founders are still friends with each other, because a lot of money gets involved and they're still really tight. And I equate not the success, but at least the personality traits to us as a trio. So what's my advice on business partnership? I always recommend to start alone, because no one is going to work as hard on the business as you. But what happens is, as you start putting yourself out there, you start to attract different types of people, good and bad. Right? So you attract bad people and good people and exceptional people. And then in that journey, what starts to happen is, if you feel there are people that can be complementary to you, and Vamsi was a big reason. I would not have been successful at this level, this young too, without Vamsi. is when you start finding business partners, don't get married on the first date. So what you want to do is do small projects with each other. I'm happy to give examples of this, but once again, me and Vamsi did not plan this. This is not a systematic approach. Kind of like when you meet the love of your life, sometimes you just don't know. You kind of just meet them and it works out. That happened to me in business. It hasn't happened to me yet in romance, but it happened to me in business, where it was like, this is how it started. It was, we met in San Diego, we met again in Los Angeles, and he really liked me. He just liked my energy. And he said, you know what? I got a bunch of brown guys who are executives and they're paying me $15,000 a year to work with me, like on mindset and morning routines. And I've always been looking for somebody like you on communication. But let's do this. How about we coach my clients as kids, right? And we'll charge the parents just a little bit of money, like $300 for them. But what do you say? And I'm a super open guy. So I said, yeah, sure, let's do it. And they wrote me a check for $3,000. And the program went really well. And I was like, cool. Let's try this again, but with my clients, and let's have them pay whatever they want. You down for that? I said, I'm down for that. And then he wrote me a $7,000 check, and I quickly realized this was going to work for both of us, and then we became partners.
Wow, what an interesting story. I'm always just on a personal level so fascinated by partnerships because they can be so amazing and really bring the business to the next level, or they can, as you said, crumble. And so I'm always very curious. And of course, usually the people that I talk to and those on this podcast have a more positive story, which is great. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't be so interested in sharing. But I'm always very interested in, what that journey and trajectory looks like.
Oh, yeah, Nicole. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's why I'm very nuanced when I come on podcasts and I give feedback, because it's really easy for me to say, kind of like somebody who's been married for 30 years and is really happy and his wife or their husband is amazing. They'll say, oh, yeah, just believe in love. Everything will come. I have a buddy right now who's in a poison pill relationship. That's what that is, what you just defined. So a poison pill just means there's somebody in the business that you just can't control who's going to absolutely decimate, and he has no idea what to do. Right. So I've seen both sides. Luckily, I haven't had to experience that side of it. But yeah, it's very important. I always like to go on defense rather than offense sometimes. And I just got lucky in that case. But, I'll get unlucky in other ways, and you gotta fix that.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, I'm very happy for you that it sounds like it was on the up and up and a complete success. You mentioned in there mindset. I'm curious how the mindset aspect comes into play in the success of your business.
For sure, Nicole. So here's how I defined mindset. There's a couple of different strings we can pull on mindset. The first one is around the skills and capabilities of why entrepreneurship is very difficult that I couldn't really articulate a few years ago, but I can now. So the challenge with entrepreneurship, from both a tactical and a mindset perspective, let's start tactics first, is especially if you're doing less than $1 million a year, you just started a new business. Let's assume your parents aren't super wealthy, so you don't have any additional funding, which is the frame I like to take because I didn't have that funding, is the idea that you actually need to be a 6 out of 10 in everything, at least, if not more. So in a job, you have to be, if you want to get paid a lot of money, you have to be an 8, 9, or 10 out of 10, but only in a specific function within the business. So if you're really good at, let's say, HR, but you're one of the best HR executives in the planet, you could get paid really high multiple. You never lose your job if you're really smart about building relationships because you're so good at that one thing, and everybody pays you money to work for them and manage that one thing, so the CEO doesn't have to take care of that anymore. But in business, what you have to do is you have to be a little bit good at sales, a little bit good at marketing, a little bit good at delivery, and a little bit good at ascension versus retention. So either you keep the client for a long time or you ascend them into other products. And it's not just you have to be at least a 6 in everything. You either or there's a partner who's really good at the things you're not, or actually, this is probably or there has to be one of these things where you're an absolute killer at, or else there's no value proposition in the business, right? So in my case, I'm sales and marketing. I'll tell you up front, I'm like a 6 or a 7 out of 10. I'm not that great at it. I make money. I make a living. I've done well for myself. It's not bad. But on a comparison basis to people who are doing millions or tens of millions in that same space, I'm like a 6 or 7. But delivery, I'm almost a 10. I will die for my clients. I know that sounds really bad, but it's I'm crazy. I will pick up the phone. I will call them. I'll do whatever it takes once they're closed and they've paid us money. And that's what's really grown the business.
Are you interested in becoming a global citizen and living a lifestyle by design in a country that aligns with you? If this is a lifestyle that you're seeking to create, we can help. Whether it be multiple residencies, citizenships, bank accounts, trust or company formations, we operate in 30 plus of the most tax-friendly jurisdictions around the globe to get you structured properly. Head to the link in the show notes to learn more and to get your global citizen journey underway today.
Over time. That's one piece. The other piece that you touched on is mindset. We can have a 30-minute conversation just on this, but I'll give you the one thread that comes to mind right now. Why are most human beings not equipped for entrepreneurship? It's very simple. Entrepreneurship forces you into the following. You need to be willing to A, challenge your existing points of view and beliefs, and be willing to adjust those points of views and beliefs based on new information that comes. And this is something that's very hard for people to accept. So if I have a friend, let's say hypothetically, and he's saying, hey, Brenden, Nicole, I'm thinking about going into business, but they're really, really stubborn about their political beliefs, I always recommend they don't do business, because in the same way they're stubborn about politics, they'll be stubborn about business and they'll get killed. And the best example of that is social media. 10 years ago, people thought social media was a junk, and people still think that. And now if you don't have social media, you're lost.
I find that so fascinating. Thank you for sharing all of that. And I think it's really interesting how you really break that down into categories of you need to be like a killer at certain things and then have somebody come in who can do the things that you lack, or to really have somewhat of a baseline, but then continue to work your way up and know what's important. And for me, I always say, if you're going to get into entrepreneurship, like there's so many things you need to know, especially like you said, if you're going solo, which probably most people are, at least to start, but sales and marketing and really understanding what that funnel looks like where are people coming in, and test it out and see. And it sounds like for you, it's YouTube. For me, it's also YouTube, but it's so interesting where you need to kind of narrow down what's going to work. And then you have that marketing piece, but then the clients are going to come in. So then you really have to understand what I call more of an authentic sales. It's not the traditional slimy, I think what we all think of when we think of sales, but it's really just more of networking, connection, and like, hey, can I help you? And do I have something that is of value to you? And then selling them on that.
100%. And I think the principle is the same, whether it's a product-based. Let's just separate this, keep it simple, because I can't give advice on tech, because tech is a completely different ball game. But service-based and product-based business, I can comment on for sure. So in a product-based business, this is what I see a lot with entrepreneurs, is they spend money they don't need to, or they make excuses as to why they can't make it work. So I'll give you an example. Somebody goes, Nicole, Brenden, I have this really good meatloaf. I make the best meatloaf in town, but I don't have money to open a restaurant. It's like, wait a second, who said you needed to open a restaurant? I have a friend of mine, just yesterday we gave her $50 because she makes the best home cooked like Indian food, and my mom didn't want to cook that day, so we just paid her money and she has a service. But it's not advertised, it's not market, it's not registered with the government. She just takes cash for that type of thing. So yeah, am I saying you should make a $1 billion business doing that? No, probably not. You might get caught by the IRS and it might be problematic. But for the first $1,000, I don't think the government's going to come after you. So it's more about saying, okay, can I make this meatloaf in my house? Can I see if people like the meatloaf? Are they willing to buy the meatloaf? So that's the way you do it. And even offering free samples is a good start. Hey, I have this meatloaf business I want to start. Hey, you guys want to try my meatloaf for free? And if you like it, you can buy meatloaf from me every month, and I'll charge you, I don't know, $20 per loaf or something. And see if people are resonating, and then you learn. That's how you win in product. Whereas in service, and I'm the best example, like, sure, did I have a little bit of luck that I'm a 27-year-old kid and I've built a very successful coaching business? Sure. But it's also important to keep in mind, this is the 9th year that I've been a coach. And the first 4, I did it for free because I just really enjoy it. So somebody who wants to be a coach like me and charge high ticket, like some of my clients pay $15,000, $20,000 now to work with me. And my advice is really simple, because people get lost in those numbers. They get too lost. That's how I started. Hey, if you're not willing to coach people for free, I'm telling you right up front, you don't have the passion or the energy to do this business. You will burn out. Versus if you really love on people, and you can see I'm enjoying this, Nicole. It's not like I actually talk a little too much, but you see I enjoy this podcast. Whereas if I came here and I said, oh my God, I have to do this, I am not meant for this. And that's the last piece, and I'll throw it back to you. is the idea that Naval Ravikant calls not product market fit, but product market founder fit. So you have a product, you have a market, but you're also the right founder for that business in the same way I'm the right founder for a coaching business.
Yeah. Ooh, I love everything you're saying. And I totally agree. Like, if you show up to your own freaking business every single day as like, oh, okay, I have to be here. Like, I have to get through another day. It's like, take a week or a month off or just stop. And I am a really big proponent. And I know there are totally mixed views on this, but I'm a big proponent of you have to start a business in something that you're passionate about, because you are, similar to you, going to be working for free or for almost no cost in the first few months, usually the first few years. And that's very normal. But I think it's so glamorized and sensationalized online where it's like, I have an Instagram account and I made 100K in the first month. And it's like, that does happen, but that is almost always the exception. That didn't happen for you. That didn't happen for me. So it's being realistic at some point as well.
Totally. Like 8 or 9 times out of 10, your advice sticks, Nicole. Absolutely. Where for most human beings, that's the frame I'm sure you take and I take as well in the podcast, which is what is the advice that applies to the majority of a population? So there's always going to be exceptions. Even some people could argue I'm the exception to, even if I don't really consider myself one. People might say that because like, well, Brenden, you didn't really have to do any sales. Your first 10 clients just came to you, right? And I would argue that's true. Right, but the other piece of the ball is going like we can't expect the same thing to happen because my next 90 clients were not easy after that, because then after Vamsi's lead funnel naturally ran out, right? He only has such and such clients, and I quit my job based on that, and that's where the pain started for me. Because funny enough, Nicole, you mentioned YouTube doesn't make me that much money. I don't get a lot of clients from YouTube. LinkedIn ended up being my cash cow besides word of mouth. And that's where you kind of test those ideas. But yes, there is that one or two off entrepreneur who is just so money driven they can make the business work. And I've met those people, and they're very smart, capable people. But I think for the majority of people, myself included, if you don't have a passion for the business, my advice is like, if you're going to be miserable, you might as well be miserable in a job, because at least a job has a guaranteed outcome, and entrepreneurship does not, for sure.
Yeah, totally agree. So if you don't mind, I'm curious, you mentioned, and I know you have quite a successful YouTube channel. Congratulations. You mentioned that it sounds like maybe not all of the clients are coming in through that way. So what does that look like in terms of a lead funnel, sales funnel right now to get clients into the system?
Yeah, 100%, Nicole. So I'll give you the number. So like 150 I've probably worked with privately so far on a paid basis. So that doesn't include the college kids that I worked with when I was younger. So out of the 150, yeah, YouTube, probably 10, max 15 of those clients came from YouTube. Don't get me wrong, the other 135 probably sifted through YouTube. That's why I'm a big proponent of it, because it's the best business card in the world. If you go to an event, you say you're a YouTuber, people think that's sexy, so they want to look you up. Whereas if you go, I'm active on Instagram, they go, I don't care, I have an Instagram account too. On LinkedIn, I got LinkedIn. But if you say you're a YouTuber, there's like this pizzazz about you, whether you got 1 million subscribers or 10,000. So I've used that obviously to my advantage, but that's not where I've gotten the majority of my clients. I'll give you my main 3 lead generation sources. The first one that I won't spend too much time talking about because it's probably not helpful to the audience is word of mouth, obviously. If you deliver a great service, and I really believe we have one of the best communication products in the world right now, people will tell other people. And that's how I've really built my book. That's why podcasts for me now are just fun. Like, I just come on shows for fun and just share value and stuff. I don't expect anything from them besides meeting the host. That's actually the main reason why I do these podcasts. I met a lot of lifelong friends who are podcast hosts, and they've opened so many doors for me. One in like 100 shows. That'll happen. So that's one, is the word of mouth. Number 2 is LinkedIn DMs, Nicole. So obviously in my business, as you can probably guess, who are the people that buy the service versus watch the free content online? And those people are completely different, right? So the person who watches my free content online is a college student. She's probably an 18-year-old girl. She's probably really worried about her classroom presentation, and she's totally broke, which is my mission, right? My mission is to empower the whole world with free communication. So she'll watch my free videos, be a huge fan of mine, send my videos to all of her girlfriends. The guys will do the same thing. But that'll be the end of it. I will make a dime doing that, except maybe. AdSense revenue, maybe like $1 or something. But even the channel now, and I'm happy to share that number, I only make $100 a month off AdSense. People think I make like $10,000 a month off my YouTube channel. That's not the case. Whereas the people who pay are executives. So they'll watch me on YouTube or LinkedIn. They'll go, oh, Brendan's a top voice on LinkedIn. Wow, that's like a private thing. Oh, he's got some cool videos. They'll watch 2, but their time is more valuable than their money. So they'll just call me directly and say, I don't care what the price is. I like you. I want you to be my personal trainer. And that is what I curate on LinkedIn. And we have a very aggressive outbound strategy on LinkedIn where I target executive women because I love those clients and they love me. A lot of them already know me when I reach out. And I send them all video messages and we invite them to our free training. And from that free workshop, they book a call with me. And then number 3 is joint venture partnerships. I don't have a lot of these, and I can give coaching on this if you want, Nicole, on the podcast. The idea is most JVs don't work. It's not win-win. So most of the joint ventures I've built have almost exclusively been with current clients. So I'll give you an example with one of them. It's like, my friend who does the program, he loves communication. He like raves about it, his communication skills, but he just so happens to run a $3 million coaching business for real estate investors. So one of those examples, and those are the types of JVs you want, where the joint venture partner doesn't even care about the affiliate commission, where they just go, I'm still going to pay it out. But like he doesn't care. So like I'm going to Nashville, I'm speaking to all of his clients, and for sure I'm going to close 5-10 clients because he's going on the stage and going, oh, Brett is my coach. He's the guy I personally vouch, and everyone just signs up because of that. And that's the third lead generation source in our business.
Interesting. Okay. How long of being in business did it take you? Because these are platforms, other than referrals, these are platforms where you really have to put yourself out there and get established. So what was that time frame like to really build that up on your social platforms?
It was a hell of a hustle, Nicole. You know what I always like to say, and we've ran 0 ads in the business. I think we've spent maybe $500 total on ads.
Wow.
But so everything I've made is pure profit, which is why I'm not a sinking ship, right? Everything we've made is like 90% margin because we'll give 10% commissions or whatever. So here's what I've learned in coaching and for service-based business in general, this will apply. So the first couple of years, you'll really struggle because you don't have a reputation, you don't have a name, you just have people you might have helped, whatever. So in those cases, you have to really push a lot of energy. And that's why, since you met me on Podmatch, and I'll just say this because it's an entrepreneurship show, or else it feels like I'm gloating, but it wasn't. That's why I'm the number 1 ranked guest on the platform. I think I've done, not in that monthly ranking thing, you won't see my name a lot of the times there, but I've done over 300 interviews just from podcasts on Podmatch, and I've done over 500 in my career, but I'm 27 years old. So some days, I remember when I was still working at IBM, I literally sat there and I did 10 interviews in a row. With the hope, I'm crazy. With the hope that one, and that's how I landed Gino as a joint venture partner. He was one of those 100 who somehow became a client. I got a client from SpaceX from there, and that opened other doors and things like that. So I hustled with my time because I didn't have any money. That's number 1. What other crazy thing that I do to build the business? That was the big one. And then what happened was, as the years went on, the seesaw starts to tip in your favor, and that tipping is and this is not like, oh, it's been tipping for 3 years, Nicole. No, it's literally just started tipping maybe 9 months ago. So even last year, I was kind of like, okay, I made just as much as I did in corporate. I can still do it, but I'm not like in the clear. And it's only now that, I'm pretty much in the clear. Like I definitely make way more money than I did at my time at IBM. And the reason that tipping occurs is it either happens for 2 reasons in any entrepreneurship journey. Either you got really, really good at front end, or you got really, really good at back end, or if you're like a superstar legend, you got better at both, which is not the case for me. So what does that mean? So front end, you either just got really, really good at sales and marketing and you figured it out. So Alex Hormozy figured out how to run Facebook ads really well. You know, other people just did really well at top of funnel. Russell Brunson knew how to run Facebook ads to his webinar. He crushed and converted the webinar, and he blew up the business that way. Or it's the back end. You're so freaking good at delivery that your clients yell to the sky about you in a way that their friends think they're delusional. Like they're a part of a cult. It's like, what are you talking? Brenden can't be that good. Like, come on. Like, he's just a dude. Like, there's no way. And then they'll just spend literally some sales calls. They would get a call and just say, you know what? I don't even trust you. I'm just going to give you money because my friend just doesn't. There's one woman, her name's Akansha. She's like a super senior GTM exec, go-to-market exec at Amazon, like top 10 executive in America. Super skeptical when she got on a call with me. And her whole family did the program. Her whole family. Her cousin, her sister, her brother. She called every single person individually. So it's either the front end blows up or the back end blows up. And in my case, it was a lot of hustle, but my back end blew up. And I think you can feel that in this conversation, Nicole, where it's like, I'm really trying to add value. I think you're feeling that here. So that what's happening is that blew up, and that's what made me successful.
Are you a global citizen or digital nomad? One of the most difficult parts of this lifestyle is not being surrounded with a like-minded community. I've personally struggled with this, and most global citizens have as well. But now there's a simple solution. Fairytrail is the ultimate app for digital nomads, remote workers, and even van lifers. Whether you're a solo traveler, a couple, or a family, Fairytrail helps you connect with like-minded adventurers. 93% of the Fairytrail community are fully remote or aspiring to be. And for being a podcast listener, use the code WORKWEALTHTRAVEL for a free lifetime membership for a limited time. Download the Fairytrail app today on the App Store or Google Play Store and get connected with your like-minded community worldwide. That's so freaking cool. Congrats on that. But I mean, like, that's also so wild where it's like you literally call every single person that you know and be like, you need to work with this one person. So what are some of, and I know you've kind of alluded to some of them already, but in you saying that, I have to know, what are some of those amazing, either big or small things that you do for clients that really just, hits home and brings that, like, I am team Brenden all the way?
This is so much fun, Nicole. Nobody asks me these types of questions. They just want to focus on communicate, which is obviously the reason people pay me money. But I'm more than happy to comment on that. So a couple of things. The first one is, let's talk a little bit about, and I'll have to talk about the offer a little bit just to expand on your question. I won't be too salesy, I promise. So most communication offers, let's say you take a Dale Carnegie 2 to 3 day workshop, right? And there's nothing wrong with Dale Carnegie. I'm just using them as an example. They'll charge you maybe $3,000 for a 2 to 3 day workshop. It's live and personally. You'll practice a little bit of speaking for 2 to 3 days. And after that 72-hour period is over, there's no more delivery. It's done. It's a 3-day event. And that's typical. I'm sure you've been to those types of events. I've invested in a lot of those events myself. And there's nothing wrong with it. Like Lewis's events made $500. You're there for 3 days, but he doesn't talk to you. He doesn't need to talk to you. You're just there, and that's it. So how is our offer different? The way that I positioned the offer and why it worked really well was I told clients, at the beginning, I charged the same price. So Dale Carnegie's thing was $3,000. So initially, Communication Excel is more expensive now. But at the time, it was $3,000. And I said, hey, here's my promise. My promise is you can send me as many videos as you want for 3 months of you practicing a speech, and I'll review every single one of them, and I will not charge per video. It's a flat fee. So the person who gets into the program is like, there's no way he's going to deliver on that outcome. And I go, try me. I'm the guy who did a 500 podcasts, right? Try me. And then they would send me a video, and then I'd respond. They go, okay. And then they'd send another video, and I'd respond like 20 minutes later. And then I'd send another video. So what would happen is these clients, and this is still happening today, I just charge a higher ticket now, and I take less clients so I don't burn out and die, obviously. Is like what happened now is a client goes, okay, if I'm going to master communication, it's either with Brenden, because he cares so much about me, or it's with nobody. So they just started sending a bunch of videos. But I'm a crazy mofo. That's my thing. Once again, I'm not good at front end, but back end, I'll crush. Right? For me, landing the podcast is difficult, but not anymore. But you know what I mean? Landing the podcast is difficult, but crushing the podcast is fun. So then what happens is at the end of the 12 weeks, they go, okay, Brenden did everything. And they see the difference from the first video to the 20th. And then they change. So what's the advice here? Because I want to make this practical to the audience now. The advice now becomes, Nicole, A, study your competition like crazy. And I'd even go as far as to say, do their service. Do the service. Like, spend a little bit of money. You don't have to spend $10,000. Spend $100, $500, $1,000. Try their service, or at least meet people who have done the service and write down every inefficiency in that service. And I'm telling you right now, if you're not willing to do that work, it means you're in the wrong business. Like, for example, if I tried opening a restaurant, I'll stop there and throw it back to you again. If I opened a business, okay, an Italian restaurant in Montreal, I would get my ass kicked by the guy who grew up his whole life on his nana's cooking, who absolutely tried every meatball in the city and is determined to create the finest quality. That person doesn't beat me. That person destroys me. I have no chance because that person will go to every length, will go to Italy, meet with the vendors, and make sure every little detail of that meatball is perfect. So when somebody puts it in their mouth in Montreal or wherever this restaurant is, they go, oh my God, I need to try the whole world. And I feel that way about this Portuguese chicken place in my city. I've brought like 25 people to this restaurant. It's so good. And that's really the key. You feel the magic, but you need to put the time. That's one. Number two is having those client calls. The first 50 calls, I'm actually doing this month. I'm meeting a lot of my clients one-on-one for 60 minutes, and I'm asking them super aggressive questions. So this is not like, what could I do better? It's like, if you had to change one thing, Nicole, what would you change? And then that person would list off those things, and that's how we've improved the product.
Interesting. Okay. Wow. This has been very informative, but of course I do want to ask you about communication. I mean, you are a communication coach and you are the master of communication. So I appreciate you sharing. And I'm always so curious to like go into other people's businesses and see what they're doing. And I totally agree about understanding what your competitors are doing and what the back end of what they're doing looks like. And sometimes that looks like actually having to purchase to really understand that. But I definitely do want to dive into the communication aspect of things as well. So I'm just going to keep it very general and broad here. What are some actionable tips that somebody listening can take away in order to communicate better?
For sure, Nicole. So let's start with the problem statement, which is, what did I feel, which ties in well with the entrepreneurship conversation. What did I feel was missing in this space? What I felt was missing in this space is that communication is like juggling 18 balls at the same time. So one of those balls is eye contact, one of them's smiling, one of them's vocal tone variety, one of them's pacing, one of them's facial expression, storytelling, and it gets really confusing really fast for somebody who's new to the field. So if you ask somebody on the street, even somebody who's unhealthy, hey, if I want to get fit, what should I do? The general population knows the answer, even if they don't implement it. Eat the right foods, less soft drinks, do more yoga, walk 10,000 steps a day. We know the answer, we just don't do it. But in communication, it's a double whammy. Where A, we want to get better at it, but we're not sure how. We're not really sure. Speak more, talk more, have more conversation. So it's vague. So the first step to solving this problem that I've really been thinking about over the last 9 years is, what are the 3 easiest balls to juggle? Because if you know the 3 easiest balls, you'll start working on it. And I call it RQV, and I'll take a pause in between for your thoughts, Nicole. RQV.
I'm sorry, I just had to laugh there during your pause because I've been thinking about this over the last 9 years. Like, just the phrasing of that was so funny. Such a long time frame. But go ahead, please continue.
Yeah, I know. It has been a long time. That's what's funny, right? Is like, even if I'm turning 28 this year, I've been in this game for such a long time that I guess you learn. But anyways,
no, I love it.
Yeah. So let's start with R, the random word exercise. Pick any word you want. Phone, I, house, and create a random 60-second presentation out of thin air on the spot. There's 2 reasons why this exercise is important and effective to entrepreneurs, Nicole. The first one that people can write down is, if you can make sense out of nonsense, you can make sense out of anything. So if you can talk about battery packs and tissue boxes and something completely random, when you go back to your own offer and product that ideally you're spending 80-90% of your time and attention to, it's going to be really easy for you to talk about that to other people in a way that doesn't command weakness, but conviction and strength in what you're delivering. And the second piece, besides that, is small talk. So what is small talk at the end of the day? It's 2 strangers having an unprepared conversation. So the idea with the random word is, if you can do like trophy for 60 seconds, at the end of the day, you're going to be really good at thinking on your feet. So practice that 100 times and you'll get really, really good at speaking off the cuff.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. So that's speaking. I'm curious about listening and how that comes into play and if that's something that you coach on as well.
Absolutely, Nicole. So that wouldn't cover RQV, so I'll go into the listening. So let me start the problem that I have with listening. So the problem is we all know it's important, right? But it's really difficult to actually find an exercise to practice this practically and efficiently. That was the gap I saw in the market, especially for somebody like me, who, like I said, rambles a lot. So I had to really master the idea of listening, especially when I'm interfacing with clients. Because especially with high stakes communication, you have to really listen to what the CFO is saying for 45 minutes because you don't want to prescribe the wrong thing or else she is in the gutter in front of the board. So you have to really be careful around that. So here's the way that I've coached myself and then I subsequently coached the world on. I call it the goals call. So the goals call is really simple, Nicole. This is what you do. You sit somebody that you love down. Could be just somebody you enjoy talking to. Don't do this with somebody you don't like. Could be like a friend from school, like college, a buddy of yours in your house, a significant other. And this is how the call goes. You start the call by just asking them this question, which is, hey, Nicole, what are your top 3 goals for the year and why are those goals important to you? And then you give that person, 5 minutes to write out those goals and you just sit there and you just do nothing. And then when that person is done, they share those 3 goals and why it's important. And then you respond with a restate. So a restate just means, hey, Nicole, just to make sure I got this, you said these 3 things. That way it's important to you. Is there anything else you want to add there that you feel I missed? And then that person will go, oh, and then that person will talk. And then for the remainder of the entire call, you are not allowed under any circumstances whatsoever to give advice. The only thing you're allowed to do on this call is 2 things. Number 1 is asking more questions about their goals. So for example, if somebody says, hey, Nicole, my goal is to lose weight, which I probably shouldn't because I'm already thin as it is. But let's say my goal is to lose weight. So then a clarifying question from you should be, Brenden, how much do you weigh now? How much would you like to weigh? Why is that important for you to lose weight? Why is that something you want to do? Why is that a priority for you? And then you just keep asking questions. And then you go to the second goal and the third goal. If you do that for 10 different people and all you do is ask questions and restate their answers and never give advice, you will exponentially increase your listening skills.
I find that so interesting, and I am curious your take on giving advice because I know myself, and I think many others are very similar. When somebody has a problem, I think it's human instinct to want to help them, to want to solve it, whether it's good or bad, and subjective advice, sometimes maybe it is not the best, but giving advice, I think, is such a struggle for so many people where you just automatically input your opinion and project that onto them.
Absolutely, Nicole. What I've found in general is most people would find value in listening. This is why you see a lot of conflict between men and women, specifically in relationships, where a lot of the times, rightfully so, by the way, sometimes women don't, and it's actually true with men too. It's not even both sides. I just feel a lot from the women's side, because 70% of my clients, funny enough, are women. And it's like, they always say this, like when I'm talking with my significant other or my husband or wife, I'm having a conversation with them and they're trying to give me advice. I just want to share my problems. I just want to vent. That's it, right? And I think a lot of people, especially men, we associate advice as value. And that's not always true. Some people just want to be heard. And a lot of people are not heard right now. That's why the goals call is so powerful. And I tell my clients this all the time. I go, you get to be heard because you're doing the goals call with me. So I'm not like this on the call, I promise. Okay, obviously I'm the guest, so I have to talk and add value. But on the client call, I'm not talking. What are your goals, Nicole? Why is that important to you? And I'm just asking questions. So just doing that is value enough for most people. Even if you have zero expertise, if you just sit people down and just ask them about their goals, I'm telling you, you are doing something that is much more valuable than any piece of advice that they could ever get. That's one piece. The second piece is, hey, let's not kid the fact here. Brenden loves giving advice, and I'm sure you do too, Nicole. So how do we frame it correctly? Here's the way I think about it. I think of feedback like a thermometer, right? So everyone has a different temperature for feedback. So some people like me, like literally my friend from Brazil visited me, Nicole, like a couple months ago. I haven't seen the guy in 5 years. And we spent every single weekend going through these types of conversations. So we'd sit there, I'd get to his house at like 12 o'clock, go from 12 to 10 p.m. and it would just be rampages of feedback back and forth to each other because it's fun for us. Like, Brenden, what are you doing with your finances? Why'd you spend $200 on these parachutes? Why are you doing this? So it's like fun for us. So my temperature for feedback, my sensitivity to feedback is 9 out of 10 because this is who I am. Whereas with most of the people you're interacting with, aka your family, that is not the same sensitivity. So here's my golden rule. Give something easy to implement. Easy. So don't rant them for 20 minutes. Give them something easy. And if they do not implement that easy thing, either repeat it or forget about it. So do not give them harder points of feedback. I call this ranking your feedback. So let's say I'm working with a client and I'm going, smile more in your presentations. And then they say, cool, what do I do next? Doesn't matter what you do next. You got to smile first. And then only when they start smiling, then I go, okay, let's go to the next one. And what you're doing here, Nicole, through this process is you're gauging the person's actual thermometer, not the thermometer that is coming out of their mouth. Okay, that's very different. So what's coming out of their mouth is, Nicole, I'm super open to feedback. Just tell me it like it is. And then you start giving it like it is, and they start repelling because we made the mistake of saying, no, forget about what they're saying. Give them something easy and see if they come back and implement. And that saved me a lot of trouble, a lot of energy, and a lot of unnecessary fighting with my family.
Oh, I love that. A lot of unnecessary. Yeah, with the family, I can imagine for most people, that's where sometimes you really need to practice that communication and listening and just sometimes being silent. So we have covered so many different topics. I mean, we're definitely not even covering absolutely everything that we could touch on here. But is there anything that you feel would be important to bring into this conversation that we have not touched on yet, whether from a communication standpoint, entrepreneurship standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, there's only 2 things left to add here, Nicole. One is your fantastic listener. Thanks for bearing with me for these last 52 minutes. And the second thing that I would say, probably on the business side, is don't be shy to experiment with different niches. A lot of advice you hear a lot in entrepreneurship is find your niche. I don't really agree with that advice because when you get started, you have no idea who's going to buy from you and why they're going to buy from you. And an example in my business is I initially thought after working with Vamsi that 100% of my clientele was going to be Indian executives. Indian IT men who immigrated from India. And that's probably 20-30% of the book. But it turns out women executives ended up being my number one clientele. But here's the thing. I didn't know that at the beginning. So they just started paying me. And I didn't understand why, literally. So what did I do? I didn't put my ego. I still have a little bit of ego left, but I didn't put my ego and say, "Oh yeah, it's because I'm the best women's executive coach." No, this makes no sense. So at the end of the program, I would just sit down, my fantastic women. I'd go like, "Why'd you buy from me?" I have no idea. And they started educating and explaining to me why they chose me. And they would say things like, "I don't know, you don't look like that old guy in the corporate boardroom. You look completely different. You look like my son, so I could trust you more. You're very good at dealing with feminine energy, blah, blah, blah." And they started listing it off. And I was like, okay, this makes a lot more sense. And that's the key. Don't be shy to just splatter a bunch of things. Like my good DNA of an entrepreneur, and I know that person has more chances of winning, is if they have 2,000 friends and they DM all 2,000 friends about their product or service. That's somebody that I know is probably going to make it, because in that 2,000, they'll get a couple of hate, they'll get a couple of things, but they'll find 10 or 20 people that are their customers, and then they'll figure out why that is later.
Wow, such an informative interview. Thank you for being here. Where can people find you? I'm sure after this, they're going to want to be learning a little bit more about you and the program. So where can they find you online?
For sure, Nicole. This is a treat. Thanks for having me on the show. This is super fun. Easy way to keep in touch. Follow me on Instagram So my handle on Instagram is Master Your Talk. Your is spelled YOUR. So go ahead and DM me there and just let me know what you thought from listening to this podcast, and I'll send you a voice note.
Awesome. Thank you for being here, Brenden.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Nicole.
You've just listened to the Work, Wealth, and Travel podcast. If anything from this episode resonated with you, I would appreciate if you share this podcast on your socials. And of course, be sure to tag me. And don't forget to leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you for joining me on this global citizen journey, and I'll see you in the next episode.